I have been enjoying watching the TV series The Chosen, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a program that's supposed to, if it's complete, run a good 8 seasons when they finish it all. But it's looking at the life of Jesus, or Jesus through the apostles and those he chose to follow him, hence the title, The Chosen. And when I first found out about this series, I was cautiously skeptical because I discovered it was made by an evangelical Christian. And evangelical Christians and Catholics often don't have the same vision on the scriptures. So I was wondering how he would go about it. And I did find out, though, that he was trying very hard to make sure that it was something that could be acceptable to everyone. I watched an interview with Dallas Jenkins, who was the man who was producing it. And he said he wanted to make sure that he did not present the gospel stories according to any one particular denomination of Christianity's viewpoint, so that everyone would be able to see it and appreciate it. And he has people from many different religious denominations of Christianity on his committee, including Catholic priests. He's even had Bishop Barron has been somebody he's turned to. So that encouraged me. And as I've been watching it, I've been very impressed with it. Not only is it very well done, but I've been watching the effect he's been putting on the stories of the apostles and the people and seeing everything from their eyes. Now, of course, in order to make a long series, he has to create some scenes. So some of the things are his own imagination of something possibly happening between the apostles at this moment or that. And he shows them quarreling, which we know from the scriptures that they certainly did do. We see scenes of that. And nothing he says contradicts anything in the scriptures. And you look at it and I say, gee, that was a clever way of presenting that. Whether it happened that way or not, I don't know. But it certainly helps us understand the understanding of Jesus through the eyes of those whom he called. And it's really a wonderful insight. But the figure he said that was the hardest of all for him to cast and portray was the Blessed Mother. Because he knows specifically that when it comes to the Blessed Mother, more than any other figure in Christianity, there's a lot of division. Because he knows Catholics have great devotion to Mary, and evangelicals and many others deliberately downplay any devotion to her. So he wanted to be able to present her in a way that everybody would be able to respect, so that the Catholics wouldn't say that he slighted her, nor would the evangelicals say, you made this a Catholic thing, by putting about Mary and everything. And he said, of course, the key scene, the hardest one of all, was the gospel story we hear today of the miracle at the wedding feast of Cana. And he says presenting that story and showing Mary in a proper way was really a challenge for him. And I think he did a very good job with it. And he was talking about it with this interview I was watching. He had another priest and a Catholic priest and a few other people on the panel that he was discussing it. And he mentioned, he says, I know I have a problem right away, because he said right away, he says, as an evangelical Christian, we don't have the same devotion that you as Catholics have, talking to the priest that was there. He goes, so I was sensitive to that. He goes, but when you look at this story, it's obvious that there's something personal and intimate going on between Jesus and Mary. And he says, first of all, we realize Mary was there from the beginning. From the angel Gabriel asking for her cooperation. He says, Mary didn't just happen to give birth to somebody that grew up to be great. Those are my words, but he uses the same idea. He says, from the very beginning, she was involved in his life. And she was an integral part of who Jesus grew up to be and how he acted. And he learned a lot from Mary. So therefore, showing her relationship with him was going to be very important. And then especially this gospel story. He says, look at what happened there. This is the very beginning of Jesus' ministry. He's just called some of his disciples around them. And he hasn't worked any miracles yet. And as at this point, the apostles or the disciples that are with him, he hasn't even called them apostles yet, are just seeing this Jesus as another itinerant rabbi. And there were many in Jesus' time that would go around and preach and gather students around them. And they, at this point, didn't know he was anything different from any of the others. And it happens that they were invited to this wedding in Cana. And right away, Dallas Jenkins knew, just by logic, looking at that story, that Mary was invited and Jesus and his disciples. So obviously there was some connection with Mary and somebody at the wedding. And from the details of the story, he suggests that it would be the bridegroom's family. So Jesus is invited to this wedding, And unlike weddings today, where the celebration lasts for 4 or 5 hours, weddings back in those days lasted for days on end. People traveled a distance to be there. And so you put them up for several days, and you fed them and celebrated. And of course, since this was a celebration, the thing you needed to really make it a feast was wine. They didn't have many other options back in those days, so water or wine and maybe a few other things. And you weren't going to just give people water for 3 days or 4 days straight for a feast. So you had to have wine, and you chose the choice wine. When there was a wedding, you gave the best you had for the wedding. And unlike our culture, where it's usually the bride's father who pays for everything and the bride's family that is running the wedding, in Jesus' time it was the bridegroom. It was he who was responsible for all the details of the wedding. And whether or not the wedding was done right was a reflection upon the bridegroom. And in this situation, he kind of assumes, because of Mary's concern when they run out of wine, that it must have been a concern for the bridegroom, that she must have been related to him and not a relative of the bride. And when Dallas Jenkins presents the scene in The Chosen, he shows a bridegroom who is not of great means, but trying to impress the parents, especially of his bride, who are rather wealthy people, that he can take care of her, that she will be well taken care of by this union. And so this agreement to marriage is not going to be something that the bride's parents are going to regret. Well, as they're having the celebration and he shows all the details and worries about impressing the bride's family beforehand, at one point they run out of wine. And of course, that would be a major embarrassment. It would be like today having Oktoberfest and running out of beer before it was over. Well, everybody's just going to go home. And everybody say, they ran out of beer. How can you have Oktoberfest? Same thing with the wedding here. This would have been an embarrassment to the groom. And Mary feels sorry for him. Why did he run out of wine? We don't know. Maybe he was poor and that's all he could provide and was hoping he could stretch it to last, but it didn't, and they ran out. Maybe he didn't prepare properly. He was just, not taking it seriously. Or maybe, like any bride and groom today might know, one of the biggest nuisances is people who never RSVP and show up anyway. And there may have been more people who showed up for the wedding than they were prepared for, and he had no wine for them. Whatever it may be, they ran out of wine, and the bridegroom would be embarrassed. And Mary turns to Jesus, knowing he could do something, and asks him, says, they have no wine, hinting, can you do something and help out? And Jesus knows right away that she's asking him to do something. And he says, well, how does your concern involve me? My hour has not yet come. He has not performed any miracles yet. He hasn't shown his disciples his power. And he hasn't come for little things like that. Let's face it, the miracle at the wedding feast of Cana was not saving anybody's life. It wasn't healing somebody who was paralyzed. It was simply saving the bridegroom from an embarrassment. And so Jesus is like, he doesn't want to get involved with it. That's not what I'm about. Now, in The Chosen, you see a little bit more. He gives a little bit more of the banter back and forth between Jesus and Mary. And at one point, you see Mary looking at him just going, please, begging her son, please, do it for me. And so he does. Out of love for his mother, he changes the water into wine. And as we see even in the gospel story, he takes 6 jugs holding 20 to 30 gallons each, fills them with water, and turns them into wine. That's about 150 gallons of wine. You want wine? Okay, I'm going to give you wine, and in abundance, not just a bottle or two to stretch it. He gave them so much wine that we're going to have plenty left over afterwards. And not just any old wine, but choice wine. And then when the waiter in charge tastes this wine and doesn't know where it came from, he turns to the bridegroom and says, people usually serve the best wine first. Because people, before they've been drinking, will be able to tell which is a good wine and which is not. So you want to impress them by putting your best wine forward. Then when they've been drinking a while, you can throw the garbagey stuff at them and they won't notice it because they're half drunk. He goes, but you've saved the best wine for now. And in The Chosen, Dallas Jenkins has the father of the bride saying, you gave us a beautiful wine before, but now you're saving this. This is your choice wine. We thought your first wine was wonderful, and this is even better. Congratulations. And he cheers the groom, so he's won over the bride's family. The day has been saved. Everybody's celebrating. And in the midst of it all, while they're all rejoicing, Mary looks to Jesus and just goes, thank you. And he gives her that little nod back like, anytime, Mom. And in discussing that, in the panel that I was watching this interview with the Catholic priest there, Dallas Jenkins turned to him and says, now, how did I do with that? He says, we as evangelicals don't have that same devotion to Mary. So, did we do all right? What do you think of it? And can you maybe explain your devotion to Mary? Like so many people ask, do you worship Mary? What's the story? And unfortunately, the priest gave some very blah answer back. I don't even remember how he responded. And I was sitting waiting for the priest to say the obvious thing there, and he didn't say it. And I'm gripping my chair going, oh, come on. Father, the answer is right there. Just tell him, well, Dallas, you got it right. Your logical understanding of the role between Jesus and Mary is the basis of our Catholic understanding of why we ask the Blessed Mother to intercede for us, and why we honor her. Because just as at the wedding feast at Cana, Jesus performed a miracle and changed his whole course of when he was going to reveal his glory to his apostles, changed all of that merely as a favor for his mother to save the bridegroom from embarrassment. He did all of that simply because she asked him. Now we know if we come to Mary and say, Mary, please take this up with your son, if she takes it up with him, he's not going to say no to his mother. And that's why we honor the Blessed Mother. No, we don't worship her, as some people think. We honor the Lord Jesus by respecting his mother and knowing his relationship with her. So if anybody is ever asking you, why do you Catholics honor Mary so much? And why do you turn to her to pray for you? Where do you find it in the Bible? Tell them, look at the story of the wedding feast at Cana. There it is. It's very biblical. It's right there. That Jesus did this miracle because Mary asked him to do so. And all the other honors of Mary just naturally flow from that. So no, honoring the Blessed Mother is not dishonoring Jesus, as some people think, that we're taking attention away from Jesus and giving it to Mary. No, proper devotion to Mary is proper devotion to Jesus. In fact, we're showing our love for Jesus by understanding and appreciating the great role that Mary had in raising Jesus to be who he was. There's another point in the scriptures where a woman in the crowd cries out, "Blessed is the womb that bore you, and blessed are the breasts that nursed you." And Jesus said, rather, blessed are those who hear the word of my Father and put it into action. And did Mary not do that? When the angel Gabriel came to her, she said yes to the Father. So she is indeed blessed that way. And so no, giving the proper veneration to the Blessed Mother that we do is proper veneration of Jesus. And I look at it this way. A lot of times over the years, whenever my mother has shown up for an event in a parish, some people have gone over to her and they've doted on her. They've said, "Oh, Mrs. Carrozza, thank you for your son, blah, 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 whatever. Oh, you cut the line. You sit here, let us get things for you." And they go over and they fawn all over her. Now, do I look at them and say, "Hey, why are you talking to your mother? Just talk to me directly. Forget about my mother. You just come to me." Oh, of course not. Ludicrous. In fact, it's quite the contrary. I'm honored when I see people giving deference and respect to my mother, because that shows me they love me. If they didn't care about me, they wouldn't care about my mother. But the fact that they're showing her honor shows me that they care about me and that they love me. Same thing with Jesus. By showing honor to his mother, we're showing how much we love him, because we say, "Mary, thank you for having such a beautiful son, and for being willing to do what God asked you, because without you, we wouldn't have Jesus." That's what our devotion to the Blessed Mother is all about. And today, even though we call it our second Sunday in Ordinary Time, it's the first one that we refer to as in Ordinary Time. It's the beginning of our new year of ordinary learning of the Lord. It's wonderful that the Blessed Mother is the model for us today, because she can help us be beautiful followers of Jesus, just as she was. In the miracle at the wedding feast of Cana, we hear the last recorded words in Scripture of the Blessed Mother. The words she spoke to the waiters, "Do whatever he tells you." That's the last words of Mary that Scriptures ever record her saying. And isn't that a perfect thing for us to remember? Do whatever he tells you. When all is done, when we go through all of the titles of Mary and the apparitions and the special messages over the centuries that we have, the bottom line is always Mary telling us, do whatever he tells you. And so, my brothers and sisters, Let Mary be our model for following the Lord. As she did, and we come before him, we know she will intercede for us. And when we turn to Mary, we're actually going to Jesus through Mary, to Jesus through Mary, and all the other saints in heaven. It's the same thing. Just like if we have a need, somebody is sick or something, and they, call their friends or text them these days and say, hey, listen, I've got a little problem here. The doctor found something. I'm a little worried about it. Would you please pray for me? Would any one of us turn to them and say, well, why are you asking me to pray for you? Why don't you just pray yourself to God? Well, of course not. We know very well that's not what's going on. They're not saying, I'm not going to pray. Will you pray instead? No, they're saying, while I'm praying, would you also join your prayers with mine? And I've never met a Christian who had any problem with somebody else joining and praying with them. Well, if we can ask our friends here on earth to pray with us, why can we not ask our friends in heaven, the saints and especially the Blessed Mother, to pray with us and for us? Indeed, we go to the Lord through the saints, through the Blessed Mother. And so today, let the Blessed Mother be our wonderful example of being a disciple of Jesus, of how to follow him. And may our motto always be, or remember the words that were the last that Mary ever are recorded of Mary in the scriptures, do whatever he tells you, so that we remember always that we go to Jesus, but through Mary. May Jesus Christ be praised, now and forever.